You know the strange part? He actually smirked when I asked. That is the moment that stuck with me. Not the months of late nights, not the sacrifices, not even the job offer that changed everything. Just that little smirk, like I was out of line for even bringing it up. My name is Jason Cole. I spent 6.5 years at the same company. Medium-sized, solid reputation, not flashy but stable. I was the guy they called when things went sideways. Product in crisis? Give it to Jason. Client unhappy? Bring in Jason. New team member confused? Jason will show them the ropes. That was fine for a while. I am not someone who needs a parade every time I get something right, but I believed, naively, maybe, that consistent value eventually earns recognition. The first time I considered asking for a raise, I was cautious. I had been doing the work of 2 people for about 6 months. One of our senior analysts had left, and instead of replacing him, they just folded his workload into mine. At first, I took it as a compliment. But compliments do not pay bills. So after preparing for a couple of weeks, documenting my impact, my hours, the projects I salvaged, I scheduled a meeting. The number I asked for was not even outrageous, $15,000 more. In fact, I had run the market data. It was still below what others in similar roles were making. I laid out everything, clear, concise, and professional. He leaned back in his chair, tilted his head like he was trying to understand a foreign language. Then came the smirk. 15,000 more, he said. Jason, we are not Google. I wanted to say, I am not asking for stock options and a foosball table, but I just nodded. He continued, Look, you are doing good work, but this is not the time to be asking for raises. Things are tight. It was always not the time. During performance review season, let us revisit in 6 months. 6 months later, let us see where things stand next quarter. I had heard every version of later, so I thanked him for the conversation, walked out of his office, and did something I had not done in over 5 years. I updated my resume, not out of spite, out of clarity. The next couple of weeks were quiet. I went back to doing what I always did, delivering. We had a client situation come up, one of our largest accounts. They were threatening to pull out. It had nothing to do with me, but I was looped in, expected to help calm things down. I did more than that. I turned the whole thing around. Got the client to renew for 18 months. No extra commission, no bonus. Just a lukewarm email from my boss saying, "Nice work." That was when I knew. They were never going to see it. Or maybe they saw it, but did not value it enough to show it. Still, I did not rage quit. I was not bitter. I just quietly started applying, just to see what was out there. I did not expect much. I had been in the same place for years. I figured most companies would see me as someone too tied to a single system, a single way of working. But within a week, I had interviews. And not just with small players. Some serious companies. Companies with vision, momentum, culture. Then I got the offer. $300,000. Full stop. It was from a private firm that was expanding fast and needed someone who could handle operational chaos with calm precision. The recruiter said, "You came recommended by someone who worked with you years ago." They said, "If you want someone who fixes things quietly, Jason is your guy." I did not show anyone the offer right away. I sat with it for a couple of days, thought about the pros and cons, thought about how many times I had stayed late, covered for someone else's mistake, filled in on weekends. I thought about my apartment, the student loans I was still paying off, and the savings I kept saying I would build next year. And I thought about the smirk. I walked into my boss's office, not with arrogance, but with intention, and handed him my resignation letter. He did not read it at first. He looked confused. "What is this?" he asked. I kept it simple. An opportunity came up. I am taking it. He laughed. Jason, come on, we are just getting started with the new system rollout. You are the only one who actually understands how it all fits together. I nodded. I know. That is why I was worth $15,000 more. He sat back, suddenly not laughing. Where are you going? I gave him the name of the company. His eyes widened. Wait, they are offering you something? I did not answer that directly. I just said, they value what I bring. He stood up, walked to the window, rubbed his face like someone trying to slow down a clock. I can talk to HR, he said. Maybe we can do something. Let me make some calls. I said nothing. He turned around. Jason, do not make a decision just yet. Give me a couple of days. We can figure something out. That was the moment it flipped. The smirk was gone. So was the tone of control. Now it was pleading. And I get it. Losing someone right before a major systems integration, someone who knows the back end, the vendors, the process, it creates risk. But I was not doing this as leverage. I was leaving. I told him that calmly. He did not like it, but he understood. That was not the end of it, though. Over the next 2 days, I got 3 emails from upper management. Not form emails, real ones, asking if I would reconsider, offering perks, flexibility, title changes. One even offered a retention bonus if I stayed for another year. It would have sounded tempting a month earlier. But not now, because they were not offering those things when I actually asked. They waited until I had options, until it cost them something. I wrote back to each one, professionally. I said thank you. I said I appreciated the time, the experience, the growth, and then I said no. The morning I left, I packed my box quietly. A couple of people stopped by to say goodbye. A few looked surprised. You? One of them said. I thought you would be here forever. That was part of the problem, I think. People like me, the dependable ones, the quiet ones, we get overlooked. Not maliciously, not always, but we are assumed to be permanent fixtures, the ones who will always say yes, the ones who can wait another quarter. But every fixture eventually wears out, and sometimes it finds a better home. The first day at the new company was quiet, not in a bad way, just calm, intentional. They flew me in for onboarding. No fluff, no rah-rah speeches, just clear expectations, a well-prepared IT setup, and a direct sit-down with the operations director and his chief of staff. Their message was simple. We have real problems. We need real solutions. We hired you because you are not a showman. You are a fixer. And that was it. Not once did anyone ask me to prove myself. Not once did anyone lean back in their chair and question my worth. They knew what they were getting, and they respected it from day one. It was the first time in a long time I felt like I could breathe. The money was obviously life-changing. That goes without saying. But that was not what hit me first. What hit me was the tone of the place, the way they listened, the way they handled disagreement, the absence of passive aggression, the absence of that culture I had been marinating in for years, where people acted like gratitude meant never asking for more. Here, you were expected to ask for more clarity, more tools, more accountability. It was not a power struggle, it was alignment. That first week, I sat in on 6 meetings and I could already see the gaps. Not incompetence, just growing pains. They had doubled in size over the past year, but their internal systems were built for a company half their size. Reporting lines were blurry, inventory reconciliation was clunky, and they were still relying on spreadsheets for things that really needed automation. But unlike my last place, no one tried to hide the mess. No one said, "This is just how we do it." In fact, the head of logistics told me, "We know this is bad. That is why we hired you." So I built a plan, not a presentation, not a keynote, a plan. Rooted in process, timelines, real-world constraints. I scheduled a session with the executive team. They gave me 90 minutes, not 15, not "send me a quick blurb," 90 real minutes. At the end of the session, the CFO said something I will never forget. "It is rare to find someone who can both diagnose and deliver. We are glad you are here." I thanked her and left the room with my notes, my timeline, and, more than anything else, clarity. It was not all perfect, though. The higher you go, the more resistance you hit. Not personal resistance, structural. The department heads were smart, but they had their own fires to put out. They were not used to someone coming in and asking hard questions, especially not someone they did not hire themselves. I could feel the undercurrent. One of them, a director in procurement, pulled me aside during a systems review. "I get what you're doing," she said. "But just know people here have built their reputations on how things currently run. If you start changing too much, too fast—" She did not finish the sentence. She did not have to. I nodded. I told her I understood. And I did. But I was not there to protect anyone's ego. I was there to build something that worked. So I moved carefully, deliberately, not by blowing things up, but by stacking small wins. Cleaned up the vendor database. Streamlined cross-departmental approvals. Built a metrics dashboard that actually reflected daily operations instead of vanity numbers. In the span of 2 months, internal error rates dropped by 17%. Response times on partner escalations down by nearly half. Inventory mismatches reduced by over 30%. People noticed. But the biggest shift came during a quarterly planning session. One of the senior VPs asked me to walk through my assessment of a proposed logistics expansion. I gave him the data, flagged the risk exposure, and recommended a staggered rollout instead of a full deployment. I was not soft about it, but I was measured, respectful. The room went quiet. Then he looked at me, smiled, and said, "That is what we needed. Someone who does not just nod along." And just like that, the perception shifted. I was no longer the outsider who had replaced someone. I was the one they leaned on. Which, ironically, is when the call started. From my old company. First, it was just a message from one of the analysts. Something benign. "Hey man, hope you are doing well. Things are kinda wild over here without you." Then, a week later, another message. This one from someone in finance. "Just wanted to ask, did you ever finalize that vendor rotation matrix? No one seems to know where it is." I was polite. I pointed them in the right direction. I did not gloat. But the third call caught me off guard. It was my old boss. I let it go to voicemail. He called again the next day. This time, I picked up. "Jason," he said, "I know this is probably unexpected, but would you be open to grabbing coffee sometime next week?" I kept my voice neutral. "Everything okay?" He sighed. "Honestly, not really. Things have been rough since you left. A couple of the systems you maintained are falling apart. The client you secured renewed, but now they are upset again. And, look, I will just say it. We miss your steadiness, your clarity. I underestimated that." I did not respond right away, so he added, "We can talk options. Seriously, just let us talk." It was strange. For so long, I had quietly wondered whether they even noticed the weight I carried. And now, suddenly, it was clear they had. They just waited until the cracks showed. I agreed to meet, mostly out of curiosity. We sat at a quiet cafe near the office I used to walk past every day. He looked tired, not fake tired, but the kind of worn down you cannot cover with coffee. He was humble, or at least more than I had ever seen him. "I should have listened," he said. "You asked for something reasonable. You laid it out clearly, and instead of hearing it, I brushed you off. That was a mistake." I nodded. Yes, it was. He did not get defensive. He said, "I know it is a long shot, but if you ever want to come back, the door is wide open. We can match the offer." It caught me off guard. I did not even have to ask how he found out about the number. Word travels, people talk, recruiters post. I looked him in the eye and said, "I am not coming back." He swallowed hard. I figured, but I had to ask. And then, for the first time, he said something real. "You deserved better, Jason, and I think we only realized that once you were gone." I appreciated the honesty, but it did not change the past. We said our goodbyes, and I walked back to my car with this strange mix of feelings. Vindicated, sure, but also sad. Not for me, for the people still there, the ones still hoping to be seen. That was the part that stayed with me the longest, because for every person who leaves and lands on their feet, there are dozens still waiting for someone to recognize their value, and sometimes recognition comes too late. I did not hear from him again after that coffee meeting. No follow-ups, no one last thing. And honestly, I think he knew there was not anything left to say. The day he offered to match the $300,000 was the day I realized how much of my energy I had spent, for years, trying to be reasonable with people who had no intention of being fair. People who only respected leverage. People who saw you clearly, but only once you were gone. That realization changed something in me, quietly, permanently. I did not become arrogant. I did not start flaunting the new paycheck or rubbing my exit in anyone's face. I just stopped minimizing myself. That was the biggest shift. I stopped apologizing for asking direct questions. I stopped pretending that exhaustion was some badge of honor, and I stopped waiting for permission to take initiative. Because the right kind of team never punishes initiative, they expect it. It had taken me too long to learn that lesson. But now that I had, I did not let go of it. The months rolled on, and with them came a rhythm I had not felt in years. Productive days, honest meetings, a team that had your back instead of watching it. We launched 3 new internal systems within 6 months. Operations errors plummeted. Customer satisfaction scores jumped. People started saying things like, "We never would have pulled this off last year." And I never once had to chase someone to prove my worth. Not once. That should be the norm. But for most people, it is not. I was at peace for the first time in a very long time. But then, something unexpected happened. A recruiter reached out, again, not from a competitor. This one was from a private equity firm I had once presented to back in my old job. Apparently, someone in that room had remembered me. I had led a vendor consolidation proposal they were advising on. It was nothing flashy, just a clear, data-driven brief that saved them nearly $500,000 annually. I did not even know they noticed me at the time, but they had. Now, a year later, they were reaching out with something new. "Jason," the recruiter said, "this is not a job offer. This is a partnership conversation." I laughed, gently. "What does that even mean?" he explained. They had just acquired a mid-sized logistics firm. The infrastructure was a mess. Legacy contracts, outdated systems, high turnover. But the bones were good. They needed someone who could stabilize the operation. Not as a hired gun, as an equity partner. I sat with that for a while. I had stability where I was, respect, a voice at the table. I was not looking for more, but the thought lingered. And that was when it hit me. I was not being asked to fix something broken for someone else. I was being asked to build something that could actually last, with ownership. Actual stake. Not just stock options that expired if someone changed their mind, but real equity. I spent weeks thinking about it. I talked to my wife. I talked to a friend who had made a similar leap years earlier and never looked back. And I sat down with myself and asked a hard question. Do you want to keep proving your value to someone else, or finally put it to work for yourself? In the end, I said yes. And that changed everything. Joining the new venture was not smooth. The transition was messy. We were inheriting systems that had been patched over for decades. The previous owners had run it like a family shop, with loyalty but little structure. Every corner we turned revealed another problem. But this time, I was not the employee hoping for buy-in. I was the buy-in that changed how I moved. I was not afraid to say, no, we are not doing it that way. I did not need to soften my insight to protect someone's insecurities. I could just tell the truth and get to work fixing the problem. And that felt freeing. One afternoon, 6 months into the new role, I got an email, subject line, checking in. It was from one of the senior analysts at my old company, one of the few good ones. He wrote, I know you are probably drowning in your new gig, but just wanted to say, people still talk about you here, and not in the nostalgic way. In the I wish he was still here way. They're still struggling. The systems are still messy. And your old boss, he is not sleeping much, let's just put it that way. I stared at that email for a while. It did not make me feel triumphant. It just confirmed what I had always suspected. They knew I was valuable. They just never thought I would walk away. And that is the silent trap so many of us fall into. We think loyalty will protect us. We think if we just keep showing up, someone will eventually reward us. But here is the truth no one likes to admit. Loyalty without boundaries is just exploitation dressed in a company polo. You can give everything and still be the first one cut when budgets tighten. You can carry departments on your back and still be told you need to be more of a team player when you ask for what you are worth. That lesson? I carry it with me now, every day. We are 2 years into the new venture now, profitable, scalable, efficient. I do not have to ask for permission to hire someone good. I do not have to pitch the value of long-term thinking to someone chasing quarterly optics. And on some evenings after a long day, I will sit at my desk, look out over the street, and remember what it felt like to walk into my manager's office with a humble, well-prepared case for a $15,000 raise, only to be dismissed like I was asking for a favor. $15,000. The same manager who told me the company just could not justify that increase right now, ended up trying to match an offer 20 times bigger. Once he realized what it actually cost to replace the value I quietly brought every day. But by then, it was too late. Not because I was angry, because I had learned the difference between being valuable and being valued. And once you know that difference, you do not forget it. So, if you are listening to this and you are wondering whether you are asking for too much, ask yourself this instead. If someone else walked in tomorrow and did your job exactly the way you do it, would they be treated like an asset? Or would they be told to be patient like you were? Because maybe the problem is not that you are asking for too much. Maybe the problem is that someone else is comfortable giving you too little, and maybe, just maybe, when you finally walk away, that is when they will realize what they lost. But by then, if you are lucky, you will not need their validation anymore. You will have already built something better.